This is the LatinNews Podcast. I am your host, Richard McCall, here in Bogota, Colombia. This week, we'll be discussing Costa Rica. Our very special guest has been on the show before. We're talking to Ronald Alfaro Redondo, who is the professor of political science at the University of Costa Rica and researcher at the State of the Nation program. So, Ronald, welcome back on the LatinNews Podcast.
Hi, Richard. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's my pleasure to be here and talk about Costa Rican politics in general. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we couldn't have picked a better time. Of course, we have the first round of elections on the 1st of February, and if it's needed, second round on the 5th of April. So, well, let's take a quick look at the elections. I mean, I think we should just leap in and say, we've got obviously President Chaves in power at the moment. He's constitutionally barred from running again. So we're looking at a potential for Laura Fernández to be the continuity candidate.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the Costa Rican election is going to be pretty soon. And, the campaign started formally, started in October. But it has been a very unusual campaign, especially because there have been very few activity. I mean, it's a low intense campaign. And, well, it's a sharp contrast with the Costa Rican history, campaigns in the past, right? In which political parties were more active, candidates even, right? But even, these weeks or days, we are approaching the election, and the election is approaching, and, only some debates, people are starting talking about candidates and options and alternatives, But you're not. If you are in Costa Rica right now, you cannot feel the electoral environment. You're not going to hear it or even realize that something is coming. The election is coming very soon. But the reason why we are seeing this is because political parties are very weak right now. So in the past, they have the ability to mobilize a lot of people and motivate voters to go to the polls and to get involved and in many different ways. But that's not happening right now. And as I said, it's very unusual.
Why? I mean, because, I've covered a lot of elections in Latin America, and I think of noise, and I think of people in the streets, mobilizations, I think of polarization. And I think I've even been in Costa Rica for elections many years ago. I remember the political debate being very strong. Why this year? Why now?
Well, the reason, again, is the context, the political context. Parties are weak, they lack of money, and they, without money, it's not easy to get involved in many activities. And also, one of the reasons why is because citizens lack of a strong identity with political parties. That's the main reason why. So if you don't have that connection and that relationship with parties, it is much more difficult to get, to participate, to get involved, go to the polls, or try to influence and persuade people to participate. And, we are in a new political era in the Costa Rican case. In the last decade, we are seeing this kind of political context before elections. It's not, there are some level of enthusiasm, attention, motivation, but it's low, right? That level is low in comparison to previous elections in, I would say 80s, 90s, 70s. Is, much more different.
So what I find so fascinating is obviously I just mentioned Laura Fernández, who is the Partido Pueblo Soberano. Mm-hmm. That's a new party. So have we seen, is this a decline in the traditional parties in Costa Rica, such as the Partido de Liberación Nacional and the Partido Unidad Social Cristiana? Is that what we're seeing, a fragmentation?
Exactly, yeah. We are seeing an important erosion of these political identities, the old traditional identities in the Costa Rican case, which are Liberacionismo and social Christians. Yeah. So this kind of erosion we are in a transition from the past to the new kind of political identities. And the reason why President Chaves and his political movement, which now is in the hands of Laura Fernández, they are trying to build a identity, a new one, political identity, and that in this case is much more, or it is clear that is influenced by this idea of the anti-PLN or anti-social Christians, and also anti-Citizens Action Party, which was the party that was in the government 8 years ago, right, or during two presidential elections.
And of course, President Chaves, I've seen one poll that he's at a 63% approval. Does this point to a certain victory then for Laura Fernández over one round or two rounds, 4 more years of the same in Costa Rica?
Well, again, the idea is that the President Chaves is not able to run the re-election campaign. He has to wait 8 years after leaving government to run again. But the political movement is trying to win the elections and go for the continuity. And, there is a big chance, I would say, is a high probability that may happen. But in politics, that not always, you don't see everything is going to happen because there is a high probability. But the context is going in that kind of direction. The campaign, perhaps, as I said, there is no campaign. The government has a very strong role, and particularly the president, right, which is very atypical situation in Costa Rica. Presidents usually, when they are, approaching the end of the government, usually they turn down the volume. They participate in less activities. They go and try to finish everything. But President Chaves is not doing that kind of thing, because the political movement is, they are building a political movement with the goal to continue in government. And one of the factors here is to move from the high popularity of the president toward a political identity, new one, related to President Chaves and the political movement, now Laura Fernández. Right. But, that's the general perspective for the election.
Just quickly tell me about some of the opposition candidates. Because we talk about Chaves, we talk about the movement, we're talking about Fernández, but who else is running here? Who else could?
Sure, yeah. Our candidates are Álvaro Ramos from PLN, which is the oldest party in Costa Rica. He has been in government before. Even he was part of the President Chaves government at the beginning for a short period of time, but he decided to run as a PLN candidate. The other one is Claudia Dobles, which is the former 2022. And now she is running under a coalition with other two parties. And other runners is from a Frente Amplio, which is a leftist party in Costa Rica, and former, presidential candidate, and also now in a new political party. And these are, I would say, the most relevant runners in the campaign.
Well, I think it's a good moment to looking at that. Of course, we tend to look at this moment of time. Obviously, not far away from the elections. Things are all pointing towards Laura Fernández, but it's a moment that we look at foreign policy, and of course look at Honduras quite significantly had some external influence in their elections. Is there anything like that going on in Costa Rica, or is it's just sort of business as usual?
Well, not yet. I would say not yet, but there is a chance also, that may happen under certain circumstances. I would say the U.S. influence in the hemisphere is getting much more, is stronger, a stronger actor now than in the past. And we're gonna have elections pretty soon, but it depends on the circumstances. I would say until now the U.S. has been doing business as usual. Everything is pretty much the same in that kind of thing. The only issue here is the tariffs. Costa Rica is pushing into the idea of getting or lowering those tariffs for the activity, because our economic dependence to the U.S., especially in the export kind of market, is very relevant. But it may happen. I would say it's not going to happen, but it may. It can be.
Well, if there's one thing for certain, that everything is uncertain at this moment in time.
Yes.
But I think obviously, Chavez has built quite I would say a robust relationship with the Trump administration, and of course, being this sort of the migrant bridge, the third country for people being deported from the U.S. will always keep him on side. The one thing that sort of springs to mind, of course, is that in 2007, obviously Costa Rica switched its sort of policy from Taiwan to China. Is there a possibility that this switches back again, with under U.S. pressure?
I don't see it. No, I mean, people are here talking about this idea of how to deal, how to manage this kind of relationship with a very influential actor for us and also in the region, in the U.S. case. But with the case of Taiwan, candidates are reluctant to talk about that kind of possibility, right? Especially because U.S. is, looking carefully, all the region, right, paying a lot of attention to what is going on in the region. And, as I said, candidates, are reluctant to compromise in that kind of thing. But for Costa Rica, it's difficult, right? It's how to manage a relationship with two strong actors, right, in the region. China from one side, the U.S., and it's hard. It's hard, especially in issues like, I would say, human rights. So, right, immigration in Costa Rica, the perception of immigrants is very positive, in contrast to other places. And one of the reasons is because immigrants are fully incorporated into our ordinary life. But it's a big issue, as I said.
Of course, it's a difficult thing to, again, I would say that Chavez has been particularly pragmatic in this and has been seeking out trade deals for both sides, trying to join that Pacific Alliance and so on. But maybe that leads us to economy here. And let's look at this as, Costa Rica is a success story in Central America in so many ways. But of course, look at the economic stability over the last few years. 4% GDP growth is measured or suggested for 2025. Reduction of the fiscal deficit, which has fallen from 68% to 60% in 2024. How is he, is this Chavez's work or really the work of his predecessors?
Well, no, I mean, it's a combination, of course, it's a combination, especially because the fiscal reform or tax reform in 2019 was relevant, especially for the stability of the public debt and funding, all these kind of aspects. In general, the economic outlook or the general perspective is doing well. I mean, the economy is doing well at the macroeconomic level. Now, the thing is how we can, how government or the institutions are able to multiply these benefits, right? Or, to benefit from the general economic perspective, because we have, prices are not high. I mean, the food prices are not high. Even people always complain because Costa Rica is considered a very, living cost is higher than other places. And if you compare how much you pay for food or for medicines, things like that, is a very difference. There are important differences in this regard, especially also because salaries are not increasing as fast as the economy, or even the job market is behind, offering good opportunities or more opportunities for people. So the idea is you have a good general economic perspective at the macro level. The issues now is more at the micro level, right? for families, for individuals who lack of a job, or for young people looking for opportunities, for women, in this kind of idea. Especially in Costa Rica, there is a big contrast between the Central Valley, the metropolitan area, and the coast, or the periphery, right? It's more rural, the coast, but you have tourism is a big activity in the coast, in the Pacific, in the Caribbean. But communities don't feel the benefits, in general, for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you're going to have that, the urban kind of thing, the urban-rural divide. And I can imagine that, if you think of places like the Osa Peninsula and places down closer
Sure.
to, either to the Nicaraguan border or so on, there's going to be these elements. But generally speaking, cost of living crisis is affecting everywhere, but Costa Rica seems to be under control at the moment. But I suppose, though, that Laura Fernández would then continue the same economic model as Chaves, and things would continue in a positive form.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, without doubt, they are gonna, implement the same kind of pragmatic perspective in that regard, especially the stabilization or stability in the economy, right? Which means, again, prices under control, or inflation, especially inflation under control, also exchange rate low, but there is a big dispute here, right? If you have a low exchange rate, people from the tourism activities are complaining because they lack, or they prefer higher exchange rate. But again, this issue, right, is how to build an equilibrium between the macro level and the micro, especially families, and the rural, especially in the rural areas, right, which they lack of opportunities, job opportunities, better salaries, better education, right, which is kind of the perspective right now, or the situation right now.
You mentioned tourism, and we have to discuss it, because of course Costa Rica is very, very dependent on the tourism industry, and therefore, and it's got to this space by its great care and awareness of the environment and protecting the environment and so on within its borders. But of course, there is some controversy around this. The potential mining projects that the Chaves administration wanted to bring in, and of course this very controversial one, Las Crucitas gold mine in Alajuela. I mean, right there on the outskirts, almost of San Jose, if I'm not mistaken, Alajuela. But tell us a little about this. What are we expecting? Do you think that the economic situation will push Fernández, if she is, of course, the president, to pursue these investments?
Sure. I mean, protecting the environment in Costa Rica has been a key issue, right? A very crucial issue, particularly because, well, we have been doing a lot of efforts, invest a lot of money protecting, territory, right? Different kinds of territory in the coast, mountains, forest. We are in that, environment is a big issue. Now, there are more tensions now in terms of this kind of dispute between some people in favor of, let's say, invest in mining, open, the activity, or even in national parks to produce, or to increase the activity of national parks. I would say, for instance, allowing more tourists going to the places just because of the more money for that. But again, there are tensions because it is not easy to manage or to build this kind of equilibrium between protecting the environment and at the same time allowing some kind of economic activity related to some areas, protected areas in Costa Rica. So again, some people are in favor, some people are against these issues. And the thing with mining, the mine, the area, the region, that one is close to the north border, close to Nicaragua. And now the activity, even is not allowed in the Costa Rican case. There are people doing it illegally, right? Of course. And again, the police is, trying to control the situation, but at the same time, there are people pushing for more activity related to that.
Well, you sort of come to a situation where I sort of think, I see similarities with Panama. I mean, are you a country that's going to be environmental and care for the environment, or are you a mining company? I mean, is it really economically significant enough to challenge, your reputation as an environmental protector to pursue these mines? I wonder what you think on that.
Sure. I mean, now is this, are the benefits, better than the cost, right? So, it is hard sometimes to analyze this in a perspective, in a bigger kind of perspective, right? Because, well, there are international actors in the past now interested in that kind of activity, of course, and also locals, as people also interested in that kind of thing or pushing for that. But also there are influential actors, environment or people who protect the environment, and they try to confront those kind of projects in many different ways, legal or for other mechanisms. But it's a kind of dispute now. So Costa Rica, I would say, citizens or the society has to make a decision about this kind of thing, and it's not always easy, right? It's not always easy.
Not at all, because of course the economic benefit and immediate benefits within a community in these areas, I can understand. But you talk about the people mining, I guess, a type of artisanal mining going on, a type of illegal mining going on. And then, of course, that brings us to really the question of security. And this has been obviously one of the key debates in Costa Rica. The whole region has obviously been knocked by, let's say, the exodus of Venezuelans and, of course, Cubans, Haitians, and others, migrants coming through. Some places have, of course, reacted more positively, others not so much. But there is, of course, this very real fear of rising crime and in Costa Rica. So can we talk about what really has Chaves done to address this ongoing surge in violence in the country?
Well, I mean, security is now the most relevant issue, right? For people, for the media, the agenda, in many different ways. The thing is that we are under a crisis, homicide crisis, especially because there is homicides. The rise in homicides has been very, very relevant and important. And in the past, Costa Rica, our rate, homicide rate, was a single digit, between sometimes 4 or 8, 6 something. Now is around 17 homicides per 100,000 people. So it's a big kind of change. And much of the activity, the criminal activity, is related to organized crime, right? Which are related to drug trafficking. And in Costa Rica has been always a kind of transit country for drugs, right? But with the pandemic, when borders were closed, everything, or the activity, the drugs activity and trafficking, they started to distribute drugs inside the country, now paying with drugs, and also negotiating, building a local market for that. And now we have gangs in disputes for territory, all these kind of factors. governments in the past, they implemented, several steps and reforms and policies for that. But in the last 3 years, have been difficult to stop these kind of activities. I mean, the security minister, they say, well, we are doing different things, also in coordination with other governments in the region. But the homicide rate is still high, right? The President Chaves, the approach is perhaps, I would say, not as intense, or perhaps is not as instrumental in terms of reducing the level of insecurity. People feel and complain about that, but the government actions and policies have been insufficient to reduce this kind of thing in many different ways. But that's the perspective, the security kind of issue in Costa Rica.
It's the central debate, I imagine.
It is
for the elections, yes.
Right.
And of course, they're very famously, Chavez has kind of pointed to the Bukele model, and there was the whole, press fanfare. Was it Bukele came down to place the first brick for the super jail, the super prison being built in Costa Rica?
Yeah, I mean, it was like several days ago, and it was the second visit of President Bukele. Government saying, well, we are trying to replicate that kind of, or policy. Well, yeah, in the Costa Rican case, it's not so easy to implement the several things that in the case of El Salvador it has been implemented. In fact, well, the new jail is inside one of the jail complex in Costa Rica. By the way, it exists right now, and now they are trying to expand the capacity, right? But still, we need some reforms, policy on one side, but also judicial reforms. People are saying, well, we need to, you need to reform the judicial system in a way that the system can be able to, not only to, try to capture, more, people who are doing or are committing crimes, but also how to process the every time that they are doing this kind of thing. And well, now again, we need a reform of the system, as the entire system, rather than just, let's say, building a new jail. It would solve, it wouldn't change much about the homicide rates, right? Rather than just having more people perhaps in prison, but is not dealing with the real causes, right, of this, especially inequality, or even the lack of opportunities for young people, better education, more recreation or culture in the cultural activities in the communities, much more community involvement in this kind of thing. But the prison and the jail, even the government is using that as one of the main policies they are, or the main promises they are now implementing. Now the thing is how to deal with the real causes of insecurity, which are more social and economic factors.
Yeah, we know you build more cells and you'll fill them. Again, without, as you say, without addressing the root causes. I think we do need to mention, when we talk about the security situation and so on, that the real problem seems to stem, when you talk about organized crimes, the Cartel del Caribe Sur, obviously, and of course, most famously, the issue that has taken place in recent years in Costa Rica is that the former security minister Celso Gamboa being arrested and extradited. It does send a message, though. It does send a message that there is something happening. But I wanted to explore this little sort of, I guess you raised a topic, and you talked about the need for policy reforms, judicial reforms. Well, we know that President Chaves, during his presidency, has quite famously clashed with the legislative, with the judiciary. again, is this something that Fernandez will continue as well? You know, it could push Costa Rica towards some sort of a constitutional crisis.
Well, it's a big, big issue as well, because in the Costa Rican political system, the executive is very, plays a very important role, but presidents in Costa Rica are weaker than presidents in Latin America in general, right? For many reasons. And now, if you play an important role, but you are not the dominant actor in that kind of relationship with the judicial or the judicial branch and also the assembly, National Assembly. And if you want things to be done, you have to have a good relationship, or in general, with lawmakers or representatives in Congress, and also with the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is a very powerful actor. And if the strategy is just it is conflict, it's based on conflict, it's hard. It's harder. I would say I wouldn't say it is impossible to get or to approve reforms, but it's harder. It makes it harder to move in that kind of direction. But the strategy for President Chaves is, attacking, is to attack representatives and also to attack the judicial system, saying they are the responsible, they are or they are the people who are, blocking, the possibility to implement or to approve these kind of reforms. That's a big issue, right? Coordination and cooperation in the Costa Rican political system is better than just conflict. By a simple thing, a very simple thing. Probably Laura Fernández is going to move in that kind of direction as well. I will say it's not, it's not going to be a surprise if she goes in that direction, and that put the political system, with very tensions or is very vulnerable in that kind of regard, because the actors, because the system is blocked. It's very hard to approve some even very simple things like budget or other issues, right?
Well, I mean, we would hope that she would approach these things in a far more conciliatory tone, obviously, at the beginning of her. But we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. But of course,
it may happen as well, right? Yeah. I mean, it may change. It's, politics, changing is the ordinary thing, right?
Mm-hmm. But it would sound to me that the democratic institutions are strong within Costa Rica then, in order to be able to manage this, if they've managed this onslaught under President Chaves of criticism and so on. So, I think we should start winding this down, Ronald. Let's just remind everyone, we got the first round of elections on the 1st of February, and if needed, the second round on the 5th of April. Do you have any predictions you'd like to share with us for the immediate future for Costa Rica?
Well, this election has been about, continuity or a change, right? A new party in government. So now the circumstances is the perspective or the probability for a new or the continuity is higher, right? I would say, higher. The President Chaves and the movement, Laura Fernández, they are getting support, and they are trying to build this kind of support and try to transfer the popularity issue into the election kind of thing. And they are doing, they have some level of success about this kind of thing. And I would say that they're few days before the election, and we are, the campaign is again, people are talking more about it. Even people feel that the campaign has been different than less active than before, but still people are watching debates, talking about, they're asking themselves and asking other people around what they are going to do, what do you think, right? And that's the kind of normal situation now, that people are also postponing their decision until the last minute in some cases, right? But I would say that the probability for continuity now is higher than at the beginning of the campaign, and also if everything remains pretty much the same until February.
Well, thank you again. Thank you for your knowledge and for sharing this with us here on the LatinNews Podcast. Obviously, we hope for the best for Costa Rica in these elections. And yeah, well, I'm sure that people will start to talk more openly and campaigns will start to heat up in the final days before the elections. We have been speaking to Ronald Alfaro Redondo, who is a professor of political science at the University of Costa Rica. He's also a researcher of the State of the Nation program. Yes, please remember, everybody, you can subscribe to the LatinNews Podcast. Just hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, either YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and beyond, and never miss another episode. But let me take this moment to say, Ronald, thank you so much for your time and for speaking with us again today here.
No, thank you, Richard. It was a pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about Costa Rican politics. Costa Rica is a small nation, and in Latin America there are much other actors more relevant than the Costa Rican society or politics. But every time that we have elections, people pay attention. People pay more attention to local issues in Costa Rica.
Well, local issues are very much of great importance in the region, and no greater importance than in 2026, it seems, at this point in time. So always important to be checking out what's going on, in and around Latin America, certainly in 2026. So thank you again to Ronald Alfaro Redondo. I have been Richard McCall here for the LatinNews Podcast in Bogota. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.